What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So with the excitement right now mounting online around a potential Nintendo Direct for this week and then a Switch 2 reveal for next month, there's been a lot of rumors and reports starting to make the rounds once again. This time, though, around a hotly contested topic, and that's backwards compatibility, so we'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Nvidia reportedly making some sizable investments behind the scenes for custom chip development that also includes gaming systems. And with a big week in front of them for Phil Spencer and Microsoft, it appears he decided to respond internally to concerns around the potential for Microsoft getting out of the gaming hardware space. So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below, and keep in mind all members have access to Newswave early and ad-free. If you want to learn more about that, click the join button down below. And we're going to start today with Helldivers 2, which has had a big week. Really, I mean, if you look over the weekend, 136,000 concurrent players at one time on Steam, and it appears Sony's found an audience of about 50-50 between PS5 and PC for what's now become a 1 million unit seller. This was pretty quick, I'd say, for what people I'm sure were expecting after Helldivers 1. Helldivers 2 has taken things to the next level in terms of gameplay, visual design, and presentation, but we can see this posted up over on X, this from the Arrowhead CEO, saying we're around a million right now in terms of sales for the game. But yes, the gap is still very large. That referring to Pow World, which, look, Pow World was this overnight sensation, selling millions and millions of copies at an accelerated rate. I feel like Arrowhead and Sony are thrilled with what they're seeing right now for Helldivers 2, as they have said. This is like crushing expectations. So it also makes you wonder about Sony's future when it comes to day-and-date PC releases alongside of PlayStation 5 games. I think that's a lock for most live service titles going forward. I'll be more curious if they try it at some point soon with a single-player game to see if they get a similar response. But Helldivers 2, off to a fast start, and I like to see it because the game is actually really good. Also, one game that unfortunately is not off to a great start is Foamstars. This went in the PlayStation Plus immediately, so I did download and try it out, which I'll give some quick thoughts on that. But first, let's take a look as some reviews did come in. And I say some because it was 10 or 11 on Metacritic, and you can see here coming in with a 59, and I think like the highest score was in the 70s, so not great necessarily. And as, again, I had a chance to play this, it was pretty easy since there's little to no barrier of entry because I have PlayStation Plus. I think this is a good one for Square to get something from Sony for, to get this in there, because it's not a great experience. At least I didn't think it was very good in terms of the presentation of the game itself. When I'm in a match, it was hard to tell what was really happening. And even then, I feel like things like reload really slows the action down completely. And I know there are direct comparisons to Splatoon, obviously. When you look at it and you go, okay, they have kind of a traversal where you're gliding around the foam, like with Splatoon, where you dive into the ink and can glide around that way. The difference is, in Splatoon, you reload while you're traversing, whereas in Foamstars, you have to actively hit a button and then wait. And that does slow things down. So that's something that I think Splatoon does very, very well. And it's actually a bit surprising that they didn't just take that idea too, because it draws comparisons to Splatoon for a reason, just the way it looks and plays. It's just odd that they kind of stopped right there. But I played a few rounds, and I think that's enough for me. But let me know what you thought of Foamstars down below in the comments. Oh, and we do have an anniversary this week, and I can't believe this is 10 years old, because I feel like it was just like a couple years ago. That's Twitch Plays Pokemon, which of course was basically Twitch chat going through and putting in commands and then having the game get played in front of them on stream. And they've been able to complete a ton of games, but obviously Pokemon being the big one that sort of started everything there. And you can see this posted up, this over on their account, saying Twitch Plays Pokemon turns 10 in a week. Join us on February 12th for our anniversary run. It appears they are indeed going back to Kanto, as they kind of outline here. So going back, I guess, to where it all started, and in that case, you can be there and try to play through Pokemon Red, I guess, all over again, so we'll see how long it takes this time. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with these Switch 2 backwards compatibility rumors that are making the rounds right now. There was some corroboration online as well that we'll get to, but first, let's start exactly where the source is coming from, and we can see this was posted up, this over on Universo Nintendo. It was written up by Necro Felipe, but I think it's very important to note that they're not necessarily the source. They're basically relaying the information from PH Brazil, and this was from a recent episode of a podcast for, as they mentioned, the Pokemon franchise, but we can see this excerpt here. Says, awaited as a potential 2024 release by Nintendo, being the Switch 2. The next system could come with the encouraging news that it will feature this physical in cartridges and digital backward compatibility, not only available to players and producers, but would also allow developers to study improvements, basically offer enhancements for the current titles in the Switch library, which is exactly what I wanted to hear, because we never did get a more powerful or Switch Pro that I was hoping would appear if there wasn't going to be backwards compatibility, because some of these Switch games just need help. I mean, the Switch system with the X1, it's just aged out, and I think it's time to get newer hardware in, obviously, that is more capable, but would also allow us to go back and play certain games at, just 1080p is, that's where we are, right? We're just like, can we just get this game at 1080p, 60 frames would be incredible for some of these games, but I think that's something that would actually work out really well for developers and publishers if they're able to have these enhancements ready to go in the first, I would like to see it launch, but in the first year. Now, it is going to be a whole thing of, would we have these be paid or would they be free? I think there is an argument you can make one way or the other, as in if it's free, people might go back and buy the game if they missed out on it during that initial Switch run, just to try out a Switch 2 enhanced edition. But on the other hand, we've seen it work for Sony with some of their director's cut stuff for $10 more. However, you would also expect maybe some new content. This is, again, from PH Brazil, so it's grain of salt territory, obviously, but I will say over on Reset Era, Nate did follow up with this. You can see this post there, where he says, back compat is present to partners and testing is underway. The major unknown seems to be the extent any such enhancements may provide. So would it be, okay, we're pushing this thing up in resolution, pushing it up in frame rate? Will there be DLSS maybe added in? A lot of question marks there. And I mentioned before, but this is something we're going to see continue to happen going towards March, where we expect Nintendo to make some sort of announcement at this time, because it seems like everyone is kind of pointing to that. And to be honest, it makes sense just on the way things line up for Nintendo from a business perspective with their financial year ending. They want to get things moving towards the end of the current fiscal year if they are indeed looking to launch the next system in holiday 2024. But it's good to hear about the physical cartridges apparently still working. So I'm picturing a 3DS setup. And then it's also good to hear about the digital stuff, because to play off of that, well, the president, Shintaro Furukawa, did talk quite a bit about that Nintendo account system that they are going to rely on quite heavily to bring people together between all of their different attractions, whether there's a theme park, their movies, or their game system. Kind of makes sense. You wouldn't want to cut off the 140 million people who currently have a Switch and a library that they've invested into, because we've seen how that's worked for Sony, but between them and Xbox, in terms of Sony just keeping people and continue to onboard more people. Nintendo should probably do the same thing, and I think at this point they will. But not too much longer. March is right around the corner, but expect more rumors and stuff to get out there, because as we get closer, you're going to have more and more marketing stuff, I'm sure, get passed around behind the scenes. So here's hoping we get to the finish line and backwards compatibility is indeed there. Next up, let's talk about Nvidia making some serious investments when it comes to their custom chip development. Now, this was reported as an exclusive by Reuters, where they say Nvidia pursues $30 billion custom chip opportunity with new unit. Nvidia officials have met with representatives from Amazon, Meta, Microsoft, Google, and OpenAI to discuss making custom chips for them. Two sources familiar with the meeting said, beyond data center chips, Nvidia has pursued telecom, automotive, and video game customers. Again, customers, very, very important to note that one. But obviously the big thing they're pushing for here with this division is AI. Artificial intelligence is boosting, for example, if you look at Nvidia stock, it is clearly being boosted by the big AI push right now and heavy competition between all these large tech companies. Yeah, it makes sense that Nvidia would say, okay, let's throw billions of dollars at this thing. Let's start building out custom chips. But it's interesting that video game customers are being brought up because obviously we're thinking of Nintendo. And in fact, that is also brought up in this article where they say Nintendo's current Switch handheld console already includes Nvidia's Tegra X1 chip. A new version of the Switch console expected this year is likely to include an Nvidia custom design, one source said. Now, Nintendo has declined to comment, but I think it's pretty obvious most of us expect it to be a customized chip, and in fact, it seems to be more or less speculation on Reuters' part here as they are talking to a source, but it's just kind of what they're expecting, not necessarily, oh yeah, we know what the chip is, we've seen it. A lot of people believe it's this T239 chip online after a ton of research on some of these forums, but it would make sense that Nvidia would create that customized chip alongside of Nintendo where they can cut certain things out to save on money and get it to a certain threshold when it comes to performance and capabilities. And then, of course, what features does Nvidia and Nintendo want to put in this new Tegra chipset? And that's probably the most exciting part. The more, I guess, the boring part for a lot of people would be this chip will also be customized with security in mind, especially after what happened when they used the stock Tegra X1 in the Switch, and it just got hacked all over the place, and the first 20 million or so were basically opened up with a paperclip and looking through the Nvidia developer guide. It was pretty ridiculous the way all of that shook out, but after they went to Mariko and so on there, they've at least put some roadblocks up, but it continues to be completely exploited by different mod chips. So that's probably something that would be a bit more boring to talk about. The exciting thing is, what could this chip do, visually speaking, and of course with performance and features like DLSS. So interesting stuff here. And then Nvidia making the push in, they say video game customers. I wonder what Sony and Microsoft would be doing for their next generation system. Will they stick with AMD where they have a pretty good rapport, or will they look around and go, oh wow, Nvidia's doing a lot of really interesting stuff over there, especially with AI, and Microsoft being big time in AI. I wonder if they bring Nvidia in. They've already had some documents get out there showing that they were looking to ARM as a potential roadmap for their next system. I guess you never know, because I'm sure Nvidia is noticing how much of a stranglehold AMD has right now on the video game console market, and maybe they want a piece of it too. Next up, let's talk about Phil Spencer addressing, at least internally, the concerns around Microsoft leaving the console market, or just gaming hardware in general. This was done through an internal meeting, apparently, that took place. And of course, information just kind of leaked out there, we'll say accidentally, but we can see this posted up. This is over on Eurogamer, and they are citing journalist Shannon Luau. It's a meeting which is held with all internal staff on Tuesday, confirmed that the company was indeed considering bringing first-party games to multiple kinds of devices, and more would be revealed publicly next week. Quote, the company held an internal Tuesday town hall where Spencer told employees that there were no plans to stop making consoles, and that Xboxes would continue to be part of a strategy that involves multiple kinds of devices. And then they, of course, followed up saying that Xbox did not return a request for comment, most likely because they're going to deliver a very similar message here this week. And I still think it's a good idea for them to get out maybe on Monday and just get that information out there. If it's a press release, post it up in the morning so we can really move past this. I think at the end of the day, we're going to have, yes, some games go over to other platforms, but not all of them. And since the reports of Starfield, Nate's kind of pulled back on that one a bit, and it doesn't seem as clear-cut that Gears, Indiana Jones, even Starfield, big titles are going right away. And at this point, we just need Microsoft to come out and respond and address all of this stuff and apparently outline their vision for Xbox going forward, hopefully with a clear-cut message that gives us an idea as to what games are going where, and reassure basically the general public, gamers, everyone, that they are not leaving the hardware scene. In fact, maybe they'll work to double down on it with that rumored handheld, that hybrid system that is getting thrown around currently. So we'll see. I guess just keep an eye out for Phil Spencer and Xbox Wire to drop some sort of information, or who knows, maybe they really do it in video form and that just drops on YouTube. We'll see. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Hideo Kojima and his new PlayStation 6 game that's PHYSINT. And this is an action espionage game that is basically like, okay, we're gonna make Metal Gear Solid again, but not call it Metal Gear Solid. Anyway, he did go a bit more in depth as to why he's doing this in the first place. It does seem like he has a lot going on right now. Death Stranding 2 with PlayStation, Overdose with Xbox, and now a whole other game that was announced before it's even started like full production. Well, this was an interesting thing that was shared. We can see this posted up. This is over on Gamatsu, and it's Kojima sort of speaking during a broadcast, Hideo Tube. All right. He says, I fell ill in 2020. It was also during the pandemic, so I was sick and isolated during all of it. I even had surgery, and I thought I can't anymore. I was at my lowest and felt like I couldn't go back to making games. I wrote a will, too, and in that moment, I realized that people die. But I turned 60 last year. I'll turn 70 in 10 years. I hope to never retire. Having said that, if the users desire it so much, I thought I should change my priorities a bit. I still want to do new things, but I decided to make an action espionage game, and that is very, wow, it's pretty dark in the sense that he's faced with his own mortality to a degree where he's writing out his will, and he's like, you know, I do want to kind of finish what I started with. If you look at Metal Gear Solid 5, it's pretty obvious everything that was going on. They didn't get a chance to really finish the game. He got kind of pushed out, or was at least isolated during development, and I don't think that whole thing wrapped up the way he wanted it to, so maybe it just kind of picks at him here and there, and it's kind of like unfinished business, and then he's faced with his mortality apparently during 2020 where he's writing out a will, and he thinks, I should do that action espionage game that I've kind of written out a bit on notebook paper and stored away. So, wow, it does make me really curious as to what he's going to come up here with PHYSINT, because these are the times where you see Kojima come up with some very outlandish ideas, yes, but also very compelling and very realistic events is what we'll say. Even if they don't feel like it at first, you go back to it. Go back and play Metal Gear Solid 2 right now, and you'll be kind of shocked with some of the stuff that is said during that story, especially towards the end. I am very, very interested to see what he comes up here with PHYSINT, but yeah, apparently Kojima realized, wow, I may not have that much time left. I want to go make that Metal Gear Solid game that I always wanted to, but I just can't call it Metal Gear Solid. So let's go trademark PHYSINT. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're taking a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, which GPU manufacturer do you prefer? Okay, Nvidia 76%, there you go. AMD 20%, Intel, it makes sense, 4%. They're still pretty new really in the GPU like market for consumers. Nvidia has been like pretty much the lead for a long, long time, right? I mean, back in the day, when it was Nvidia versus ATI, it was fierce between fans. I kind of feel like it's dropped back a bit, where AMD versus Nvidia isn't as big of a deal for most people, and a lot of people really lean towards Nvidia, but I have noticed people with Nvidia have just gotten annoyed at the way they've been running things, especially with the pricing around these cards that have gotten really just outlandish at this time. But back in the day, it was serious business online between Team Red and Team Green. Not as much anymore, especially based on this poll. And we're gonna finish up with a couple of comments here. We'll start with this one. This is from some other kind of user. Says, if Switch really gets real about that load time, I'm on it. I swear, I assume you're talking about the load times being just about eliminated. That wouldn't shock me. Back in the day, one of the reasons that Nintendo didn't go with CD-based N64 is because the load times were so long, and the president at the time said, why would kids wait, 10, 20 seconds at times for their games to load in on the PS1 when it's instant on the Nintendo 64? Clearly, they were wrong about that, but in this case, going back to no load times, I think is becoming a bigger and bigger deal now, because it's something I don't think about necessarily as much on the PS5 or the Xbox Series, but I am reminded of it when I go back to the Switch, or you could even say like the PlayStation 4 or the Xbox One. We've just become used to it. So I think that is a feature that they should have figured out. And fortunately, I think Nvidia and just fast storage in general that they can move to should make that happen. And we'll finish up with the members comment. Again, I wanted to pull comments from the members video as well, which we can see this is posted up. This is by 9 Arachna, says the thing about the phone upgrades is probably the financing and trade-in options. Microsoft doing financing for the Xbox One X is what got me to finally get one. I think it was $30 to $35 a month, came with 2 controllers. I think 2 years of Game Pass, which turned into 3 or 4 when they did the Game Pass Ultimate upgrade for $1, as well as the now old Xbox Live. Yeah, that is the thing that cell phones have really as a big benefit, is they can tie the cost of your cell phone into your bill and you really don't even notice you're paying for it, and you sign up for 2 years with Verizon or T-Mobile or somebody, right? And your bill is more expensive, but the phone was free up front, and it's just something you pay over time. I think Microsoft was onto something with that, but the problem is they have to figure out what subscription they tie it to that feels like a necessity, because people just have a cell phone bill. They're like, well, yeah, I need a cell phone. So they have no problem signing up for multiple years because it feels like they need it. So I don't know how you do that with a game system other than you're just going to finance this thing over so many months, and that's just the way it is. Maybe they can figure out a way to tie it in and partner with internet providers, cable. I'm not sure how they can work that one out, but that would allow them to upgrade consoles constantly if they want, every other year even, if that's the case, and people are willing to basically finance their systems going forward. Otherwise, hey, you can buy a $1,000 or $2,000 phone, maybe eventually get to the point where you can buy a $600 or $700 game console outright, or finance it over 24 months. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. With all the information going around right now around Switch 2 backwards compatibility as well as enhancements, are there certain games from the Switch library you would like to see enhanced for the new system? And then also, what about Nvidia's big push behind the scenes for custom chip development? Do you think they try to find their way into the next Xbox or the next PlayStation? And then Microsoft reassuring people behind the scenes with Phil Spencer holding a meeting. Do you think they're going to stick with hardware? And in fact, do you think that hybrid Xbox is actually a thing? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.